Oba Oba, Baltimore Ska by my brother Micah Shalom. Isso. Maravilha, maravilha, maravilha. Bem-vindos, bem-vindos todo mundo. Espero que vocês estejam bem. Welcome everybody. Bienvenidos. Um abraço a los amigos, a todos os amigos, all of our friends. If you are here in Austin, Texas, tuning in today through our channel 16. Yeah, Austin Music Channel 16. Un abraço, big hugs to you guys as you keep supporting local music and supporting international music in Austin, Texas. Mucha música aqui in Austin, so thank you for our tribe over there, the Austin Music Channel. Un gran placer. Big, big pleasure to always bring connection. Our musicians, we usually have these conversations before our shows or afterwards, and we are a little bit deprived of those conversations. So that's part of the reason that I'm coming every Tuesday or most Tuesdays with different amazing artists, beautiful creatives who have done some music that I love. And today is no different. Nope. Today is no different. We have Loulou Gelichkani At 7 with Frederico7. She is one of the creative forces behind a tremendous band, Night Glitter. Oh my gosh, a tremendous band. Beautiful record they had in 2020. That's right. And we're going to talk a little bit about her trajectory in music and her record and more things, just get to know a little bit about Loulou in general. Some of you guys may know the band and know her, and for some of you guys, this is all new. So, muito obrigado. If you are tuning in via social media, we always have folks in Brazil. Meus amigos brasileiros, abraço. Se você está no Brasil, for all of you guys that may be tuning in from Brazil or throughout Latin America, Mexico, Argentina, grande abraço, forte abraço. Thank you for enjoying this content and for enjoying independent music in Austin. Que bom. That's the silver lining of this whole situation this year, that we are building these connections. Uma vez mais, eu sou Fred. That's me, Frederico7. That's, how I go with my music. Love to play international music, some funk, some soul, some samba, some Latinx pop. Todo, pouquinho de tudo. A big salad, right? That's what we do. I would like to play a song by Night Glitter before we bring Loulou in the studio. And since we are deprived of some live music, the first song by Night Glitter that I'm going to cue up, it's called Tunnels. It's a live version. So let's check it out. Tu as perdu ton âme et toi tu Eso. We got Loulou Gelichkani here from Night Glitter. It's such a pleasure to be sharing some pretty amazing music. Yes. How are you guys doing today? If you're tuning in right now at Austin Music Channel, Channel 16, obrigado. Thank you for your presence. I know you enjoy international music. Keep hearing good things over there from the tribe from Austin Music Channel. Happy holidays for everybody. Abraço a todos no Brasil, que vocês veem a gente. Many of you guys are going to see this later, sometime later, but not live. If you're tuning here after the fact, grande abraço. You are lucky. We got a great guest and some beautiful music coming up. With no further ado, I think it's time for us to bring Loulou into the studio. I met her earlier the year. There is our advocacy group here in our city, the Austin, Texas Musicians. If you are a musician, you live in Austin, Texas, you want to follow this group, you want to go to the website, Austin, Texas Musicians. and check out on the social media because they keep us informed with, a lot of what's happening in our town and things that you may need to know. That's right. That's right. And, earlier in the show, I played Baltimore Ska by Micah Shalom. Just a quick shout to Micah. Micah has a new release, just released his beautiful tune, and he was the guest here last week. So check Micah Shalom's music out, keeping some ska, some funky reggae alive in our city. Muito obrigado. So now, with no further ado, let's bring to the studio our special guest. Hello, Loulou.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your presence. Yeah, how are you doing today? Oh, my pleasure. No, it's a big pleasure. I've mentioned this to a few friends. I believe it was maybe Adrian Quesada that before I met you, I think Adrian Quesada had mentioned to me, wow, there's this cool band. And then I kind of put two and two together when we started interacting on Austin, Texas musicians doing some advocacy for music. So you and your band, you were on the list of people that I wanted to see in 2020. And I was like, I need to check that show. But that's part of the show, like I'm kind of catching up with people that I admire. So yeah. You're welcome.
Jamming, and every time you start speaking in Portuguese and Brazilian, my heart just starts exploding. I miss traveling so much, and I miss South America and the fans in Brazil, Argentina, Mexico. So I loved hearing your voice. And then you started the show with the Tim Maya, who is like very close to my heart. I think I play that record, his records at least once a week.
Amazing.
So, yeah, he's one of my top 10 favorites. So for sure.
Oh, that's what a great coincidence. He had such a interesting story. You may know, like he was not known and he was an immigrant hustling.
I know, yet he was so well known within the musician of a lot of like studio musicians and people who jammed. I mean, everyone loved Tim Maya, So
yeah.
So that's a whole other.
it's a whole other thing, but I feel great because then a little bit of what I've been doing in the city for many years. I have my original music, but then I also introduce a lot of Austinites to that music, the Brazilian funk, and so yeah, it's nice to share. And how are you doing today? I like to ask my guests that question all the time because we're just taking one day at a time. So just today,
what's December of 2020?
Yes, yes.
I'm doing good. I think that I'm understanding that we're more and more that a lot of us are going through this where it's just like ups and downs, like I have sometimes 2 really great weeks. I've definitely, as a musician, as a parent, I've adapted as much as I could. And so for 2 weeks, I keep myself busy. I'm definitely in motion. And then there's definitely that one day where you wake up and your heart is just on stage. And no matter what you do, you just can't pull it together because all you want to do is play live shows. I mean, so I'm playing with Night Glitter, and Night Glitter is my Austin band for the past 3 years. But, for the past 21 years, my whole life, my 21 years consisted of touring with Thievery Coorporation for 5 to 6 months out of the year. And so this year has definitely been very traumatizing. I mean, not just, the pandemic, but just not being able to tour. That was just part of my cycle, my natural cycle. I think I'm healthiest physically and happiest when I'm able to share music, live music with people. I think it's just, after a while, it's in your blood as a musician. So that's definitely been the hardest. Adapting to the virtual aspect of making music has been really difficult for me. Not that I just can't do it. To be honest with you, I just don't really like it. I think, we're an analog band, with Night Glitter. I mean, our whole aesthetic, but also sound, has been to find textures through analog, like instruments and recording equipment. And that was kind of the appeal initially for me, even with Thievery. When I first joined Thievery 20 some years ago, it was because of the analog gear. I loved, browsing through thousands of vinyls to find that cool beat. And like the sampling process with Thievery was also analog, like ripping old beats.
Oh, cool.
So this kind of evolution is like, it's really kicking me in the butt. I have to adapt in a different way with like the digital world. And I think we're definitely doing it, but we also ended up focusing, John Michael and I, with Night Glitter and with Josh Blue, our drummer, to just record and not worry about, what's to come, what's going to happen, but just focus on still being creative and recording music. So going back to your question, how am I doing today? I'm actually doing pretty good.
That is, I love it. I love it that, just you're getting to the heart of it for creatives during that time. We don't know. Well, I'm speaking for myself, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know what mood necessarily are going to be tomorrow. I mean, I'm holding okay. I have my little house here in Austin, people that love me, and my that world is keeping me really together. But it is, as you said, the ups and downs, and just riding that emotional wave as it comes. And I must say, I relate with you when that's part of the reason why I'm coming out on Tuesdays with different people, because I was not getting a lot from playing music, like, the whole live streaming. I don't know, maybe some folks still really enjoy it, and there are some people that will enjoy live streaming forever. But I also know that
I think people need it, but I think I relate. I can see that we have very similar. We're positive and we like to bring people up, and you want to stay positive. So yes, we're doing good, but I think one of the main attractions to making music was a social aspect. Like, I love being around people. I loved like playing live shows. I really like grow as a human being with live interaction, and that like there's a vibe that you just can't get, personally. I would really love to know like the people who do, and I think it's just maybe generational, or people have an easier time. But for me, I miss the vibe. I miss the vibe of like, a heavy room with like just a lot of people, and that intensity of like a live show and just socializing with and human interaction, which this pandemic has really just challenged us, not just as like musicians, but as people in general, because we're such social beings. I mean, we thrive as far as like our communities, like even kids. I mean, I'm like, kids thrive on seeing facial expressions and touching and being, around their community. And so that element has been removed. So it's really strange. So I'm going to let you go back to it, but I agree that it's just really strange. And I think some people need it because they have to keep going with the virtual. But I think sometimes people like us that are into world music, the whole point is travel and meeting new people. And I think that the virtual aspect is a little bit, strange. It's hard to get that feeling.
Absolutely. We are going to get back to Night Glitter and your process, and we're going to get back to talk about I want to hear about the process. I want to hear y'all's chemistry. I want you to tell the world what's the Night Glitter vibe. Of course, we can hear it on the music, and we'll hear more music after the interview. So if you're an Austin Music channel, hang around. We're going to hear some more Night Glitter. Real quick, I just wanted to once again give love to some folks that may just stumble across the channel. Hello, everyone. We're here with Loulou Loulou of Night Glitter. Some folks, if you see this in Brazil or throughout America Latina or anywhere in the world, hello, hello. And you can, if anybody has a question, you can ask questions, but we can only see questions if you are on the Frederico7 YouTube channel on the Facebook page. So if you go to Frederico7 YouTube or Facebook page, you can ask a question to Loulou. So let's get back to it. A little bit about our trajectory, Loulou. We are both immigrant musicians of sorts. I want to know more about your story. In my case, I was born in the 70s in Brazil in the middle of military dictatorship. So for me, in the 80s, yeah. So for me, like my life, my formative years had this, Brazil fighting to kick out the military and a lot of stuff. And in indirect or direct ways, I feel that there's things that I carry on my music and my art as a result of that experience. Talk to us a little bit about your formative years. How did you fall in love with music? Tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, we had very parallel experiences. So I come from an Iranian family. So I grew up during the Iranian Revolution. My family were activists, journalists, and athletes throughout the 70s. Yeah, my dad was a soccer player in Iran all throughout the 60s and 70s.
Oh, I love soccer. I'm going to have to find if you got a YouTube video or anything like that, I'll geek on it.
My dad played with Pele. So if you're a soccer fan, you get excited. So he was the captain of Iran's soccer team. My dad was transferred to San Francisco earthquakes at the end of the 70s, right before the revolution kind of blew up. And I was actually born outside of San Francisco in 79. Don't do the math. And then my dad actually went back to play back for Iran, and then the revolution hit. So then we exiled to France. So I grew up very much in a similar state as you did, where it was just a lot of political stuff going on, a lot of activism in the household. We always had a lot of people over. My family was very much like an open door culture. So they had people in and out all the time to just help out and like have meetings and kind of regroup the Iranian community that was exiling from Iran to France and Germany at the time. And so for me, music has always been a part of my life. Both my parents love music. My mom is definitely in her own right a poet. She was a kindergarten teacher growing up, and she was also just a poet at home and still writes poetry on her own.
A shout to all teachers who are artists out there. A shout to you.
They really are. They keep us going. They're kind of the foundation, they're the family away from family. And then my dad always listened to music. My dad had he was really into traditional Iranian Farsi music, and then was
and the poetry. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't speak Farsi, but I have amazing Iranian friends. I don't know about the Iranians that I've met in the United States. I'm enamored by your culture, and one of the things that I notice is I haven't met any other culture in the world that loves poetry. There was one time that I spent. It was Halloween here in Austin, and my friend Mohammed Firuzi of Atash, he came to my house. He was like, "Freddy, we're gonna go to a Halloween party." And I was like, okay, cool. And then we show up to West Austin. There's no Halloween party. It's all of these pretty wealthy Iranian Americans, and the food's amazing. These guys are all wearing suits and ties. They seem very serious. But then they bust out the poetry book, and they bust out a few drums.
So emotional.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you talk about your mom being a poet and poetry around, there is a very deep tradition of poetry.
I think also it's not just, poetry is in the history with Hafiz and Rumi. That's part of the culture. It's also, it's definitely a country and a language full of symbolism. Like where you say some languages, and I'm not going to choose which one in Europe because then there's a whole argument about it, are about romance and love. For me, Farsi has always been amazing language of symbolism. Like just the simplest sentence can be full of so much symbolism, and you see that in the arts. You see that in films, like Iranian films are so poetic and full of symbols. Each shot, if you just pause on it, is full of symbolism. So, I mean, it's definitely one of those. It's in the blood. It's in the history. They focused on the sun and the stars for centuries. So, but then, yeah, the family, I mean, in our home, it was a lot of poetry and it was a lot of music. For me personally, as a young kid growing up in that environment, music was sort of an escape. Just like you, I am a child of the 80s. And so my Walkman was my
Yeah.
which is why we're putting out cassettes also again nowadays, even with Night Glitter. But
That is cool.
Walkman was my best friend, and I was recording. My sister had a boombox in her room. So during the day when I would get home from school and she wasn't home yet, she was older than me, I'd record the radio on blank cassettes, which my dad had a variety of incredible cassettes because he was recording all their talks and their speeches for like protests. So he had cassettes full of like speeches and I would steal, snag a little cassette from him and record my radio channels. And then at night, when it was my time to go to bed, lights out, go to bed, yes. And then it was like I was like in a completely different world. My bed was like a stage. I definitely like used Persian rugs in our living room as like the perimeters of my stage growing up, where I would just like dance, and like go and sing to my invisible audience. So music was definitely an escape, and I didn't think about all of this till actually recently, where I had time to think about my childhood, because people are always like, how, were you always wanting to be a performer? And to be honest, I always thought no. I was like, no, I was pretty shy. Like, and then you start thinking about some of the time that you were actually alone, not with your family, not with your friends, but the times you were alone. And my alone time was definitely as a performer, and I was on stage and I was like learning songs that were on the radio. So it was definitely a really good escape for me.
I keep resonating with some things you said. So I got a question because I did the same thing with the radio. So I would record the songs and I would be so happy when I would record a song I like and it got to the end and the announcer of the radio didn't interrupt.
I know I remember a whole week or two where I was trying, and my music taste is all over the place. I have a super eclectic taste, and especially growing up in France, there's definitely a lot of like Spanish pop. Like growing up, I loved Mecano.
Oh, Mecano! See, yeah, I mean, I wasn't supposed to like it. I'm a boy. I hate Mecano.
But it was so intense. Like she had such an intense voice. So, for example, I was trying to get Hijo de la Luna, this one song that I loved, and I was really young, so it sounded very like it had a fairy tale quality. The son of the moon. So I was trying to record it over and over, and the energy, it was like energy, like would just pop in right before, and I'll just stop it and be so deflated and have to wait for the recording again. So yes, I did that a lot.
Oh, I have some things that are another question because I'm kind of picturing and resonating with me that time at night and you're listening to that. As a kid, I was also very quiet, very shy. And here we are talking to each other, performing, etc. Are you, when people talk about being extroverts, introverts, or even ambiverts, I don't even know, like, how do you kind of see yourself? Do you have two sides?
I'm pretty extroverted. I think throughout with experience and like I've become quite an extrovert. I think I get introverted in a setting where it's overwhelming, like too many people. Like I might seem introverted, after a show, because that moment is kind of weird, after playing a big show and there's a lot of audience. And with Thievery, for example, we used to get so many fans that would come backstage afterward. And I seem sometimes introverted to people at first, but I think as most artists and musicians can relate, that if you need sometimes that like 10, 15, 20 minutes of just regrouping by yourself or with your bandmates, after a
Yeah,
show. But then you
absolutely.
give me like 30 minutes and I'm an extrovert again. I like having a drink and socializing with fans. So I think in my early age, I was definitely introverted, but I grew into being a pretty comfortable extrovert.
Yeah, I can I can feel that too. Let's hear a little bit about a trajectory. So you're growing up in Iran, and then you guys go to France, and you're still that process. You keep falling in love with music, and you
Yeah.
etc. etc. How does that jump to you putting yourself out there and beginning to play with thievery? How was that in your life in that period when that kind of started? What were you doing? Were you studying music, or were you writing music, or what was going on?
I was actually writing. So I always played piano. I always played keys and piano growing up. I was always really grateful that my dad actually got this upright piano into our apartment in Paris. Was like kind of the one thing that I'll remember as the incredible gift, growing up. So I always played keys and piano, but then moving to the States, um, I actually stopped and I focused on writing. So I was writing a lot. I had like diary after diary, sketchbook after sketchbook. And the goal still is that I'm going to write a book one day. It's still kind of part of, um, you know, the mission of sharing my story and stories. But I think at the time going to school, I was studying art and photography, and I was leaning towards literature. I had focused on French literature, and then I was going to move into art history in school. And meeting Thievery was really a natural process. We actually met through friends and at 18th Street Lounge. It was a club where I used to go dance with some of my friends because it was the only place that played music that I could relate to, that I wanted to hear. It was a lot of world music, acid jazz, like African, like fusion music. And still to this day, some of my favorite music and the records that I collect are West African psychedelic funk music. Like
Oh yeah.
that's my jam. So, it was one of the places in DC that used to play that kind of music. And I ended up meeting Thievery at their club. They had a studio in the back of the club. And so it was a really natural process. I was writing poetry in French, and I just put the French poetry on top of their beats. And that's kind of where, it all happened that way naturally. And then next thing you know, for 20 years, we're touring the world, which is insane. And putting out a record every year or every 2 years. So
Oh, that is, and that many stories. I'm sure you could write another book of just your adventures in tourings, right? Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Um, so for all folks watching either on Austin Music Cable, Austin Music Channel 16, thank you for being here. For folks on Facebook or YouTube or anybody that loves Thievery Coorporation and didn't know that here in town there's a band called Night Glitter with Loulou, who is amazing. You guys need to know about it. And I've been plugging in your website here and so forth. Let's fast forward a lot, I guess, because there is the whole big chapter, which is those 20 years. But before arriving to Night Glitter, talk to us a little bit about, I'm sure it's a process as artists, there's a process of seasoning your voice and seasoning your aesthetic for what you want to do. Lead us a little bit from Thievery Corporation to Night Glitter. Talk to us a little bit about
that timeline.
not necessarily musically, but just in general. What do you bring, or what did you learn, or what were the things that you're like, okay, now it's time for me I have another vision, and it's important that I'm gonna get it out. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So film actually has a big, has a big place in my life. I love film, and one of the goals, the way we always describe Night Glitter is that it's cinematic. And it's because, cinema has a big place in my heart. Maybe because growing up in Paris, but also with the history of like Persian, Iranian film is like very dramatic, and like the music is so intense. So growing up at, playing music with Thievery, living in DC, I actually really fell in love throughout the early years of touring with Thievery with Austin. Like I really, when we first started playing in Austin, like everyone says, it was like driving to Austin was like just quiet, empty, and it was like tumbleweeds. And then you got to Austin. And for me, Austin was like Richard Linklater. So it was like driving into Slacker Town.
Yeah.
And, our percussion
and I've seen a few of y'all shows here. So some of those shows I actually had the pleasure to be there. Yeah.
And the percussion player of Thievery is actually Frank Oral, who is the leader of Poi Dog Pondering.
Oh.
And Poi Dog has a huge history in Austin. And Frank was the diner quiet guy in Slacker, which made me fall in love with Frank as soon as he joined Thievery. I was like, oh my God, like, dude, you
are that dude.
But I really love Richard Linklater, and I also just really love the aesthetic of Austin. There was something really intriguing about it. I love the vibes. So about 8 years ago is when I kind of decided that I'll still be making music with Thievery, but I felt like DC was just not allowing me to grow as a musician. I was definitely ready for a change. And I'm just I'm a very easygoing person. And I felt like at the time, the capital of the United States was just not where I needed to be growing up already.
The vibes were not matching.
We're not matching. And I already grew up in a pretty political household, of activists. And I just felt like I needed something different to inspire me musically. And I always loved Austin, and I kept watching, and all the films were popping up. Every time I had some sort of like an inclination to think about my life and what I wanted to do, a Linklater film would pop up. So it was kind of one of those like, it was meant to be. And so I decided, I talked to my daughter, who at the time was like 9, 10, like, hey, I think I want to are you ready for another adventure? Like, I think I want to move. I want us to move to Austin. And I was telling her, telling them about Austin, and they were into it, And so we made the move. And I think moving to Austin 8 years ago was where I started developing and thinking about my own voice away from Thievery Corporation. But like, what do I want to do? Like, where do I want to dive in musically? And so I did let myself fall more into the psychedelic aspect of music that I really enjoyed. And so that's kind of the natural progression. And about 5 years ago, so I moved to Austin 8 years ago. And then 5 years ago, when John Michael and I met, it was kind of one of those, like, it was meant to be. Like, we were both looking for someone to bounce off ideas that was like understanding and creative. And, we started a relationship when we didn't know that we were actually going to make music. We fell in love, but we realized that musically we also fell in love. We both have very similar taste.
That's magical.
It's very magical. And, our dates ended up being us jamming. I mean, he had a Tascam board in his place, and our dates initially were like, let's go, like all awkward dates where people are like, let's go and have a beer. And then, after a couple of months is like, hey, do you want to just jam and record on the Tascam? So, it happened. And so I think that moving to Austin and making the decision to follow those kind of like cute, like clues that were popping up in my life with like film and videos, I made the move to Austin. And, to fast forward, obviously not this South by that got canceled, but the one before, I ended up going to see John Michael play. He was playing with Ben Dickey, who played in the Blaze Foley film.
Oh,
And so they were playing the Foley, the record basically around the movie. And I'm watching John Michael and Ben and Charlie and all of them play. And I'm standing next to Richard Linklater.
You're a guy.
Yeah, it was like one of those moments, like South by Austin moments, which I'm sure a lot of people living here get to hang out with him all the time. Actually, yeah. So then I just turned around and I was like, hey, I just want to tell you, you're one of the reasons why I moved to Austin. And he was like, whoa.
Too much for me to handle.
No, he was actually really fun. He's like, I want to hear this. So he is that person. I mean, he is a very, he always collects stories, which is what I love about the way he writes films. But I also told him that Frank was in my band. He's like, what? Happy Go Lucky Guy? Because that was the title in the script, was Happy Go Lucky. He's like, tell that Frank, I said hi. And Richard made us take a selfie to send to Frank.
Amazing.
And that was kind of like a silly highlight, but it felt like it was full circle. It made sense that I was in Austin. I didn't have any more doubts about where I needed to be to continue and push forward in my music. It kind of made sense. So I thought that was a pretty fun. And I usually, as all local musicians, South by can be very overwhelming and annoying at times.
Of course.
But then there are those little moments where you're like, whoa, that was crazy magic. Like it all happened during that time. So.
Absolutely. I like to think of South by as be a little sponge, Frederico. Be a little sponge. Don't.
Yeah.
I have things. We're creatives. We got songs that we have to release. We got stuff going on. But like, be a little sponge,
and go and absorb it. Those
Absolutely.
are my favorite South bys, when I just have no expectations and I just kind of go with the flow. That particular South by, John Michael, I think, was playing 20 shows between playing with Ben Dickey and then Kelly Willis and a couple of other people. And we had an Ike Glitter show. I think he was playing 20 shows in total. And so that South by, I was like, you know what? I'm your partner. I'm your girlfriend. I'll be your chauffeur. I'm going to drop you off at gigs. I'll be supportive. And then I'm just going to explore and go with the flow. And it was a pretty magical, I ran into so many friends I hadn't seen in years that were also traveling. So I think in music in general, if you remove the expectation, even though it's hard, because don't get me wrong, I have mad expectations.
It's almost like a discipline, right?
It is. It's like, it's very much like it's a discipline in music. If you slowly try and remove the expectation, it's when you actually have the most fun,
Yes, absolutely.
So it's a hard one. It's a virtue, it's like patience is a virtue. Like removing expectations seems to be like a virtue for musicians.
And of course, it's hard because you put so much hard work into making your musical production tip top, and just the sound, like you're saying. I think people 2020 sucks in so many ways, and one of the ways it sucks is because people need to hear your band live, like we're saying, like you were talking to us. And I want to ask you now. Let's get into the production of this record. Let's talk a little bit, and I'll just put it on the screen real quick. First of all, you guys have awesome aesthetic, super psychedelic, cosmic. It's awesome. And I must say this record is on point, guys. If you are, if you just arrived right there, nightglittermusic.com, go check it out, please, because you're not going to be disappointed. And of course, you're going to have expectations. You make amazing music. You take very good care of the production value and the imagery and everything about the band. I can see that is on point. So, talk to us a little bit about that record, that process of that specific record that you guys came out with. Was it around the late spring of last year, or of this year?
So the record, it took us it took us a solid 2 years to make the record, and it came out during the early pandemic. Our release show is at the Mohawk in April. And so that was canceled. It was with Sir Woman and Lord Friday the 13th on a Saturday night at the Mohawk. But there's a silver lining to all of it. The record, so it's our first self-titled, and it took us a good 2 years because the initial batch of songs we recorded with Jonas Wilson. So some of them we recorded at Jonas's studio, and then we started recording the rest of the songs mainly at our studio at home. So it's a combination of both. And I love that Josh Blue, our drummer, who's also an incredible engineer, and Kyle Ellison, who plays guitar and also has his own incredible studio. So all the musicians on this record are also engineers, which is like a total nerd squad.
I must say, it feels very organic, but I think there is an engineering to that organic.
No, but engineering is they're all like, it's analog studios, so they just really know their gear. And so even when they're recording their own parts, they're spending so much time and understanding everything that needs to happen that it almost feels like every time someone puts something on a song, it's perfect. It's magic because they all have such great ears, And, having a number of engineers that really get along and play really well together is kind of not easy because sometimes it's too many chefs in the kitchen kind of vibe. But in this situation,
is that where you come in?
But in this case, I want to say that it didn't happen that way. They're all such good friends, and they had such respect for each other that it worked. It kind of worked naturally. Like they would bounce off ideas with each other, and once we record, and everything was recorded on tape. So the initial recording was all on tape, and once that was bounced off and put on Pro Tools, that's when they would get together and but I think Josh, John Michael, and Kyle and Jonas all put in a lot of work. I definitely start stepping out when there's too much of bouncing off ideas with the production, because I get to that place where I can't listen to the song too many times because I become overly critical of my parts.
Oh.
I started hearing too much the vocals or too much the keys, and then I was like, "Oh, should I do it again?" And everyone was like, "No."
We are way past that.
That part of the production, I very much trust 100% John Michael, Josh to take over, and then I'll put in my 2 cents afterwards if I feel like they've gotten too psychedelic, where you're bring it back a little. But yeah.
No, I can see that. I just want to once again give a shout to everybody at Austin Music Channel. If you're here, hello. Los amigos in Brazil and Mexico, toda Latinoamérica. Loulou misses being there around the world and eating those wonderful foods throughout all Latin America.
And my mojitos. I
Así.
definitely miss those.
So, yeah, thank you guys for watching and spending a moment here. And once again, go to nightglittermusic.com. You can find out more about the record, more about the band, and big shout to your band members that are just, it's just kind of, there's a magic there. You touch upon something there. Sometimes maybe just the songs, maybe just me, but I see this soft and hard thing happening. Like you mentioned, alluded, sometimes if it gets too psychedelic, I say, like there is the storytelling and in your voice that is quite unique, and I like a lot of the music that I like has this soft and hard edges, kind of like there's a whole building a whole landscape, and well, you said cinematic, so duh.
But also like all of like Tropicalia, all of that was that, it was like super groovy, and that's how I feel about when I say I love West African psychedelic funk music. It's because it's the same thing with like Tropicalia. There is really groovy, like you can hear just the grooves are just really lush, but then it gets kind of crazy, like it kind of gets lost in that crazy, like crazy Tropicalia sounds.
Yes.
And then it comes back, and I think that's like the beauty of like, it's psychedelic music. I think some people get confused when you say that you make psychedelic music. They just think of psychedelic rock.
Yeah.
And that's such a like specific, that's its own thing. But psychedelic music, it's such a broad spectrum, and like world psychedelic music or psychedelic funk music, psychedelic African music. There's so many genres within psychedelic music. So I hope that we can, I guess, somehow educate people that there's just a lot more than just psychedelic rock, which I love too. I love, because I think we have definitely that in Night Glitter, but psychedelic music is very broad.
Yes, my introduction, you already got to it. My introduction to the whole world was to Tropicalia, and to this day, in a good way, I'm a victim of Tropicalia because it's going to be in my system.
Victim of Os Mutantes.
There you go. There you go. There you go. Loulou, we're gonna have to get to your music, and eventually this conversation, the show will end for now. But I'm just so glad that we could talk about so many things and find out, some things that we have in common even. And I have a game that I want to play with you.
Okay.
So basically, this is a questionnaire by philosopher Marcel Proust.
Okay.
And the deal of this question is just answer whatever comes to your mind real quick. Like, don't spend too much time on it. And you can pass too. You can say, okay, pass.
Okay.
So here it goes. Question number 1. What's your idea of perfect happiness?
Water.
What is your greatest fear?
Water.
Which living person do you most admire?
Too many people to choose.
What is your greatest extravagance?
Hair color.
Wonderful. What do you consider the most overrated virtue?
Patience.
Which living? No. What is the quality you most like?
Oh, no, wait. Overrated.
Overrated. Okay, got it.
I thought underrated. In my mind, I went underrated, and then I heard you afterwards. So pass for now.
No problem. What's the human quality that you most admire?
Kindness.
Yeah. What or who is the greatest love of your life? I didn't make the question.
My grandparents,
Amazing.
their spirits.
When and where were you the happiest?
Now,
Ooh, honored. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
less self-deprecating attitude, more
Great,
confidence.
great. What do you consider your greatest achievement?
My daughter.
Shout to your daughter and your whole family. It's hard for you to have a family and do all that you do, and they support you. So, props to you as a mama. Props to
Thank
your
you.
whole family. Where would you most like to live?
The beach.
Oh, yes. What is your most treasured possession?
Synthesizers.
I see. What is your favorite? Oh, no, that's a bad one. What's your favorite? I ask. What's your favorite occupation?
Womanhood.
Wonderful. What do you most value in your friends?
Honesty.
Do you have any favorite writers?
Many.
Which historical figure would you most identify with?
I'll have to think about that one.
It's a good one, right? I don't know either. Yeah.
Yes, for now.
Yeah, that's good. Now, this one is just a interesting question, very, very basic. What are your favorite names of people that you hear? What's your favorite names?
I mean, that's also a tough one. There's so many for different reason, but I always love the name Roxy. I just thought it was like Roxy Foxy. Shiva, my daughter's name, Shiva, was always like one of my favorite names, so I was glad that I got to use it. That's a tough one. There are plenty of names.
There are plenty. You gave us a few. That's amazing. That's good. That's good. We're almost at the end. What is that? What is the thing that you most dislike?
Hatred.
Okay, good one. Do you have a great regret?
Maybe one.
Okay.
Do I have to talk about it?
No, you don't.
Okay. Yeah, maybe one.
I know some of these questions are like, oh, so bearing. Two more.
Okay.
How would you like to die?
Oh, fast.
Fast. Me too. Last one. If you were to have one, what would be your motto?
Oh, think of others, don't look back are definitely the ones that I like the most.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Loulou, for your time and for your energy. And it's one of those things when this pandemic is over, I can't wait to see you guys live. I can't wait to be at a show and, share some energy with y'all. Thank you so much. Props to your band. Yeah, and props to your band members too.
I missed hanging out and jamming with all of them. We actually have been working a lot on music and doing some collaborations, long distance with people. So
talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think that the next batch of Night Glitters song is actually a lot more upbeat. When your life is so chaotic and you travel so much, you kind of want music that slows you down. It makes you feel relaxed. But this past year has been so relaxing and so slow that I actually feel like the trajectory of Night Glitter is a little bit more fast-paced and more upbeat. So, and I think there'll be a single coming out soon, I'd say late summer, for the new record. So I'm excited about that.
I'm excited about it too. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but if I still having these conversations, then I would love to have you and maybe even more folks from your band, and we can talk about that and so forth. So once again, thank you so much for your time, your energy. Oh, yes. And once again, everybody, Austin Music Channel, we are going to listen to another song by Night Glitter. Can you set us up for this video?
Yeah, of course. The song is Le Passage, The Passage. It's actually, we shot this video on 16 millimeter. So it's kind of a little short film that we shot on 16 millimeter. The director of the video was actually Richard Linklater's assistant.
Oh, wow.
It ties it all back in. She was introduced by a Costa Rican friend when I first moved here. This Costa Rican buddy of mine sent me a message and was like, "Hola chica, there's another girl that you should meet in town. She's very much in the same things you're in, and I think you're both really interested in ayahuasca, blah, blah, blah.
Eso.
And so you should meet her." And we met for coffee and we kind of fell in love. So Vanessa Pla is a really good friend of mine since I moved to Austin.
Big shout to Vanessa. Great work. Great work.
Yeah, really good work. Amazing work. And she's an incredible videographer. She's worked since with a lot of musicians and also worked with Richard Linklater on some films. So it brings it all back. And we decided to do an homage to film noir, to just like French old cinema, and adding our own imagery into it. So Le Passage is about slowing down and taking the time to observing what's happening when you're falling in love.
Oh, yes. Let's observe what happens in the impermanence of time and the permanence of love. Loulou, big hugs. Thank you so much. And yes, keep safe and connected with your people that you love, and keep making that wonderful music. And we can wait for what's next. Okay, take care.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. See you soon. Ciao, ciao, querida. And here, guys, is Le Passage by Night Glitter. Enjoy. And here it comes.
Quand je regarde dans tes yeux, mon cœur il bat si fort pour toi. Et mes pensées s'emportent dans le courant de nos idées. Mais je me trouve attachée à l'amour d'un cœur brisé. Allez, donne-moi la force de continuer. Ne me laisse pas partir dans le passé. Allez, donne-moi la force de continuer. Ne me laisse pas partir dans le passé. Tous les mots deviennent complètement paralysés. Je peux pas voir clair dans ta réalité. Alors il me faut du temps pour pouvoir continuer. À trouver une histoire qui résonne avec moi. Allez, donne moi la force de continuer. Ne me laisse pas partir dans le passé. Allez, donne-moi la force de continuer. Ne me laisse pas partir dans le passé. Quand ton cœur il s'ouvre, je sais que tu vas me voir. Oh, il y a une histoire qui résonne dans ma tête et ça me rend complètement folle.
Amazing, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here once again. Thank you, Loulou, amigos, friends of Austin Music Channel, amigos por todo o Brasil and Mexico. Happy holidays. Stay safe, stay kind, stay classy, and I'll see you next Tuesday. Abração. Abraço na alma.